The first leg of this match was what the Champions League is all about, as two heavyweights slugged it out at the Allianz Arena. The individual brilliance and big game composure of Madrid against the tactical awareness of Tuchel's Bayern. So what tactics were on display? Let's first assess Bayern. Madrid started off the game more aggressively in the defensive phase, often with a mid to high 4-4-2 block, and it was up to Bellingham and Vinicius in most instances to cover both Bayern Munich's double pivots and put pressure on the centre-backs. But with only two men deeper in their midfield, the priority was definitely to prevent the ball into the midfield. In the first half they had much more success doing this, but Bayern Munich were already hunting for a multi-part solution, firstly by staggering their double pivots so that Real were in essence using two men to pick up one pivot. Secondly, they used their centre-backs quite wide, and with Lima often supporting the man on the ball, with quick, deep passes, Bayern could manipulate the Real front two and create space for their far side centre-back. And the centre-backs having this space was only made more dangerous by how Tuchel used his midfield and wingers, which he changed completely in the second half, but we'll get to that. Tuchel in the first half was extremely aggressive with both of his fullbacks, and both Musiala and Sané operated higher up in the half spaces, creating not just a box, but also allowing Thomas Müller to play right up alongside Kane. This created several problems, because if the shape was not quite disciplined enough from Real Madrid, Sané and Musiala in these spaces would be more than happy to receive here, and both can turn on a dime and only need a step or two to get away from their man, so they were consistently attacking the centre-backs from this position, and because Bayern used a front two, they always had great support to begin combinations with. This might be the perfect example, as Bayern are attacking in their box, and Musiala in the half space is perfectly between these three men. That's all the space he needs, as he turns instantly, and Müller in that centre-forward position combines with Musiala to get him into a great position. There were other possibilities, because we saw Toni Kroos and Tchouaméni try and pick up these men a little quicker, which would leave a huge gap in the centre of the midfield. And both Kane and Müller are confident in dropping in to link up play, and Real could not allow this to continue. When Real were ahead, the solution could just be to drop the front two, or at least one of them, to protect the centre further. But the simplest solution was just to defend much narrower, making it easier to pick up these men while protecting the centre. And sure, the Bayern fullbacks could get onto the ball. But despite Bayern initially committing men into the box, the threat of Real on the counter made them reluctant to commit this many men into the box, reducing their threat from crosses. But still, when the fullbacks did get onto the ball, the Real fullback would have to cover a cross, and it still provided the opportunity for underlapping runs from the midfielder to get into good crossing positions. But as I just mentioned, both fullbacks being this high, and often Goretzka attacking the box, had Madrid licking their lips on the transition, and we saw them looking to hit these areas hard on the break. Tuchel is a very adaptive and tactically astute manager, so with just a few tweaks at halftime, he turned the game on its head. Guerrero on for Goretzka was interesting on the surface, but it unlocked a whole new dimension for the Bavarians. Firstly, Müller was no longer an aggressive second striker, and instead operated much more in the midfield, with Guerrero alongside him, and Lima being fully entrusted with being a single pivot. The knock-on effect was both fullbacks operating a lot deeper, and Sané and Musiala moving into the wide regions where they flourished. Real Madrid now had huge defensive problems. There were genuine threats out wide for Bayern Munich, but if the fullback committed to moving out wide too early, Bayern still had men in the half spaces who would be making threatening runs in behind and looking to drag Real Madrid's defenders out of position. Not only that, having fullbacks deep not only drew the attention of the Madrid wingers, It also offered much more protection for Bayern against the transition. But as the second half showed, the biggest impact was facilitating the 1v1s out wide. Where in the first, it was the comparatively harmless fullbacks with space, both Sane and Musiala looked lethal with this space, attacking their men relentlessly. This led to both Bayern goals. And both men were outstanding throughout this match. As for the Madrid tactics, they were primarily vibes-based as always, and this works well when you have experienced and high-quality players. Bayern defended in a 4-4-2 with Kane and Müller high up, but again with a potential numerical disadvantage in midfield, and just the way Madrid play in general, it was all about looking to create overloads around the ball. Both fullbacks would push up high, which would usually lead to Valverde moving infield, either higher up, or if Bayern were pressing effectively with their front two, he or Kroos could move into the wider regions to receive the first pass and escape their press. One of the reasons this didn't lose Madrid's progressive shape was Bellingham being able to drop in to be the extra man. But the overloads around the ball from Madrid, whether it's both Vinicius and Rodrigo occupying one flank, or the midfield shifting to one side, often lead to the far side being free for a potential switch. And for Vinicius' opener, we see the midfield overload around the ball on the right-hand side, creating space for Vinicius to initially drop in, drawing Kim higher up the pitch, and then allowing him to spin in behind, creating the goal. Perfectly poised for the second leg in Madrid. And based off this match, I want to know who you think is going through next week Wednesday, and who impressed you the most in this match, aside from the obvious in Musiala. For the tactical scores, I was a big fan of Tuchel's in-game adaptation and the success that they had, as well as relatively good control of Madrid on the transition, earning him a 7.5. Madrid were also great in this encounter, with Ancelotti always being harder to rate tactically, but still his solid overloads around the ball earn him a 7. But what are your ratings? Drop them down below. And if you enjoyed this match, check out this one, examining what makes Bellingham so special.